The scream shattered the stillness of night, jagged and raw, ripping through the crumbling farmhouse. David staggered, his breath clouding in the freezing air, pulse roaring as dread rooted him to the ground. He whispered, "Who's there?" Yet silence pressed harder. The wind moaned through fractured beams, carrying a stench of rot and iron. A wet, dragging noise slid across warped floorboards, steady, relentless. David's gut clenched, his muscles screaming to flee, yet his legs betrayed him. The cold thickened, biting deep, each breath harsh. From the black doorway came a whisper, rasped and broken, but unmistakable. It spoke his name with slow cruelty. David's chest heaved as terror carved into him, for the voice that spoke was his own, hollow and warped. David slammed the farmhouse door and hurried home, gravel cracking beneath his boots, but the whisper followed him in thought. Inside his modest house he locked the door twice, shoulders pressed to wood as his lungs burned. "It wasn't real," he muttered, though disbelief laced every syllable. Warm lamplight spilled across the hallway, chasing shadows yet failing to soothe. The reflection in the glass revealed his pale face, lips trembling. His chest heaved as unease curdled into certainty. Something had followed him back. Silence pressed against the walls, so deep it roared, broken only by the uneven rhythm of his breath. The house whispered with shifting groans, each sound magnified in the stillness. David poured water, hands trembling enough to rattle glass. The faucet dripped steadily, yet beneath came another sound, metal scraping stone deep and slow. His eyes snapped toward the basement door, the air colder in that direction. "It's only pipes," he whispered, but fear cracked his tone. The grinding sound thickened, deliberate, as though it crawled upward from below. His chest tightened, dread rooting him where he stood. The kitchen light flickered once before steadying shadows stretching unnaturally long across the tiles. The basement door rattled faintly, a tremor like fingertips brushing wood. David's breath stalled. A shadow seeped through the crack beneath the door, long, crooked and shifting like ink spreading in water. His chest clenched as sweat rolled cold down his spine. "No," he whispered, voice brittle and hollow. The shadow lingered before sliding away. Silence pressed close like a hand over his mouth. His heart hammered against his ribs, while dread screamed louder than reason. Something alive waited in that darkness, not stranger, not animal, something that knew him, something that whispered his name. David pressed trembling fingers to the brass knob, cold against his damp skin. Sweat traced down his temple, his pulse a frantic drum. "I need to know," he muttered, though his words cracked thin. The silence deepened, pressing, daring him. His grip tightened as faint breath leaked through wood, whispering on air. His chest heaved, lungs begging him to flee, yet something darker pulled downward. A smell of damp earth drifted sharp, suffocating. Slowly he turned the knob, the hinges groaning low and heavy as the basement door edged open into blackness. The basement door creaked open, and a cold breath of air drifted up the stairs. David stood frozen, his hand clinging to the knob, eyes locked on the void below. The smell of damp earth filled his nostrils, sharp and suffocating. His mind screamed to close the door, yet his feet shifted forward, one step sinking into the dark. Shadows writhed along the stairwell walls as if alive, curling closer the deeper he stared. His pulse thundered, chest tight, each inhale louder than the silence around him. "It's only the house," he whispered, though disbelief soaked the words. The wooden steps moaned, bending under his weight, every sound magnified in the stillness. Something waited below, silent, patient, and David felt its awareness pressing against him like invisible eyes. David descended slowly, each step groaning beneath him, dust rising with every shift of weight. The air grew heavier, damp clinging to his skin, as though the walls themselves sweated. His hand brushed the rail, splinters biting into his palm, grounding him in the nightmare. He whispered, "Keep moving," though the words barely held together. His throat tightened as he listened to faint sounds below, soft, rhythmic, like something being dragged across stone. The noise stopped when he froze, as if it knew his fear. Darkness stretched endlessly ahead, his lamp flickering in protest. His heartbeat quickened, a drum to the silence, his breath shaking out in bursts. He felt as though he was trespassing in a place not meant for the living. At the bottom of the stairs, David stopped, his body rigid, his eyes adjusting to the dim light. The basement smelled of wet soil and rust, a mixture that clawed into his lungs. His lamp revealed tools scattered across the ground, shovels, a rusted pickaxe, and a wheelbarrow tipped sideways. Fresh dirt was piled high at the far end, as though someone had been digging recently. His chest heaved, stomach turning as he stepped closer, boots sinking slightly into loose soil. He muttered, "This isn't possible," though the evidence bled into reality. Dust hung in the air, shimmering faintly in the light. The silence pressed heavier, as though the room itself was holding its breath, waiting for him to see more. David stepped closer to the mound, dirt crumbling softly under his boots. The smell of soil grew stronger, thick with something sour beneath it. He froze when a faint sound stirred, whispered words weak and muffled, seeping from beneath the dirt. His chest tightened, panic clawing at his throat. His hands shook as he raised the lamp higher, the light trembling across the mound. The whisper grew clearer, hoarse, desperate, forming a word, his name. David. The sound sent a violent shiver down his spine, his knees nearly buckling. He muttered, "No, this can't be real." But the earth moved, a subtle shift, as though something alive pushed against it from below. David's breath caught as he dropped the lamp to the ground, its beam spilling unevenly across the soil. His hands clawed at the dirt, scooping with frantic desperation, each handful heavier than the last. The whispers grew sharper, trembling with panic, repeating his name again and again. Sweat poured down his temples, mixing with the grit of soil beneath his nails. His muscles burned, yet he tore deeper, until his fingers scraped against something cold. His chest seized as pale skin broke through the dirt, a hand, human, trembling faintly. He staggered back, breath ragged, horror surging through his veins. His own voice echoed inside his skull. "You shouldn't have dug." The hand twitched again, alive, begging to be freed. David fell to his knees, soil caking his hands as he clawed through the mound with wild desperation. The muffled whisper beneath grew louder, hoarse but urgent, calling his name. His breath broke in ragged bursts, body trembling as he dug deeper. Each fistful of dirt felt heavier, his muscles burning under strain, yet the sound drove him on. His nails tore against stone and roots, pain sharp but meaningless against terror. Then his fingers scraped flesh, cold and clammy, not corpse still but twitching faintly. His stomach dropped as he pulled harder, the outline of a buried face beginning to surface. His mind reeled, muttering, "This can't be," yet his hands refused to stop. The basement seemed to close in, air tightening, earth groaning under his touch. The dirt shifted under David's frantic digging, and a pale hand burst free, fingers twitching weakly in the light. David froze, heart slamming as he stared at the trembling hand. It was not just a hand, it was his hand. His face drained of blood as recognition sank like ice in his veins. "No, no," he whispered, shaking his head as panic clawed up his throat. The hand clawed at the air desperately, nails scraping soil, seeking freedom. David stumbled back, but his body betrayed him, drawn closer by morbid compulsion. The mound shifted again, a muffled gasp escaping from beneath the dirt, fragile and broken. The sound was his own voice, ragged, alive. Terror and disbelief tore through him, every bone urging him to run, yet his feet remained rooted. David's trembling hands clawed deeper, revealing a face beneath the soil. Mud clung to hollow cheeks, lips gasping for air, eyes opening slowly. David's heart stopped as the features became clear, his own face staring back at him, dirt-streaked and terrified. His breath came short, chest heaving as he staggered backward. The buried David gasped, choking on soil, voice breaking in a desperate plea. "Help me. The words echoed in David's skull like a knife twisting. His mind fractured, unable to comprehend the living mirror before him. His throat burned as he muttered, "This isn't real, I'm dreaming." Yet the sound of his double's strangled coughs grounded him in nightmare reality. The air grew heavy, basement walls bending closer, shadows tightening around them both. The buried David's hand reached upward, clutching weakly at the air, soil crumbling from his trembling fingers. His eyes locked onto David's, mirroring every flicker of terror. "Please," he whispered, voice cracking, throat raw from dirt. David staggered, knees buckling as panic wrenched through him. His head shook violently, muttering, "You're not me. You can't be me." Yet the resemblance was perfect. Every scar, every feature unmistakable. The weight of unreality pressed heavy, his sanity fraying at the edges. The buried figure coughed, chest heaving as dirt spilled from his lips, desperation etched in every broken breath. David clutched his hair, dragging at his scalp as dread clawed deep, the basement spinning as he faced his living double. David reeled backward, slamming into the damp stone wall, heart thrashing in his chest. His double's voice cracked again, begging, "Don't leave me here," words hoarse, drowning in soil. David's stomach lurched, bile burning his throat, every nerve screaming to flee. Yet something darker pulled at him, guilt and horror weaving chains around his limbs. He whispered, How is this possible?" But the question vanished into the heavy silence. The buried David coughed violently, spitting clumps of dirt, hands clawing upward as if dragging himself from a grave. The basement seemed to breathe with him, walls trembling faintly. David's vision blurred with sweat and fear, yet the undeniable truth loomed. Another version of himself was alive beneath his feet, begging to be free. David staggered closer, his breath shallow, as the buried version of himself forced words past cracked lips. "It's not me you should fear." The double rasped, voice trembling like wind through broken glass. David's stomach twisted, sweat dripping into his eyes as his heart clawed at his ribs. His double's hand gripped his wrist weakly, soil falling in clumps from pale fingers. "The other one," it whispered, tone sharp with terror. David's mind fractured under the weight of the words, confusion and dread knotting tighter. His throat tightened as he muttered, "What are you?" The buried self coughed violently, chest heaving, voice hoarse yet urgent. "It's coming." The basement pressed heavy, every shadow thickening as if listening. The basement walls revealed fresh scars, deep claw marks tearing across the stone like something feral had raked them. David's eyes darted across the scratches, breath faltering. "You did this?" he asked, though fear made it sound more like a plea. The buried double shook his head weakly, eyes wide with terror. "Not me," he gasped, body trembling. David's chest constricted as he stepped back, gaze flicking from the scars to the mound. The realization gnawed at him. Something else had been here, something strong enough to carve stone. The air reeked of damp and rot, heavier with each breath. The double whispered again, barely audible, "It's still here." David's skin prickled, his instinct screaming to run, but his body froze. David's pulse thundered as his mind turned desperate. "A trap," he muttered, voice breaking. He studied the double's face, his own reflection, trembling, streaked with soil and sweat. "Why are you me?" he demanded, anger mixing with terror. The buried version coughed, spitting dirt, voice hoarse. "Not me. Something else. It wears you." David's breath caught, throat burning as fear dug deep. Thought lodged sharp in his mind, was he looking at a victim, or was this the deception? Shadows shifted unnaturally at the basement's edge, as though recoiling from the light. David whispered, "Then what am I?" His double's eyes flicked to the dark corner, expression hollow. "Pray you never find out." Memories blurred and bent in David's mind. Faces flashed, places fractured, his childhood home merging with the damp basement. His chest heaved, panic clawing at sanity as reality slipped. He grabbed his head, fingers digging into his scalp, muttering, "Which one of us is real?" The double's voice cracked, whispering, "You are, and you aren't." David stumbled back, legs trembling as though the floor tilted beneath him. He stared at his mirror self half buried, face a reflection yet filled with foreign terror. His breath came in gasps, ragged and uneven, as the basement pressed smaller, darker, tighter. He felt his mind splitting, like two lives colliding in one fragile body, both screaming for control. The buried double's hand clawed desperately at David's shirt, his voice cracked, nearly broken. "Don't leave me here," he begged, coughing blood-tinged dirt. David's eyes burned, tears mixing with sweat as his body shook. "I don't understand," he whispered, voice trembling. His double's eyes glistened with raw desperation, gaze locking onto him. "You will, when it takes everything." David's chest heaved as terror shredded through him, his legs unsteady. He felt the urge to run, yet the sight of his double's trembling hand chained him in place. The basement light flickered violently, shadows dancing like figures across the walls. Somewhere in the dark, something shifted, slow and deliberate, as though answering the call of the buried man's warning. David jerked his head upward as the floorboards above groaned under heavy steps. His breath hitched, the sound stark against the silence. Someone was in his house. He staggered toward the basement stairs, his double's rasping pleas still clawing at his ears. He gripped the rail, heart pounding as dust shook loose from the ceiling, with every deliberate step above. His throat dried, body trembling with the thought of facing whatever waited. "Wow! No one should be here," he whispered, his words cracked and hollow. The muffled creak of movement echoed again, followed by a dragging pause. The house felt alive, listening. Fear pressed down on him, suffocating. David knew he wasn't alone anymore, and what walked above him was not meant to be in his home. David crept up the stairs, every step screaming betrayal as the wood groaned beneath him. His palms slicked with sweat, his chest rising in shallow bursts. At the top he froze, his ears straining against the silence. Then he saw him, a figure standing in the hall, tall and lean, clothes old and weather-beaten, eyes glinting in the half-light. The stranger's face was lined, skin weathered with age, but his expression calm, almost knowing. David whispered, "Who are you?" his voice trembling. The man tilted his head, lips curling into a faint smile that carried no warmth. The silence stretched, thick and unyielding, until the stranger finally spoke, his tone low and deliberate. "You've dug too deep." The stranger stepped forward, boots heavy against the floor, his presence consuming the narrow hall. David's body tensed, instinct clawing for escape, yet his feet rooted him in place. The man's eyes were calm, too calm, as though he carried knowledge not meant for the living. "Only one of you belongs here," he said, voice deep, cutting through the air. David's lips parted, words choking in his throat. "One of me," he stammered, shaking his head. The stranger's gaze sharpened, his smile fading into cold severity. "Two cannot remain. The house won't allow it." Shadows shifted on the walls, as if the house itself agreed. David's chest burned, dread surging with every word. He realized the horror had only begun. David blinked, and the stranger was gone, vanished as though he had never stood there. His breath came in ragged bursts, chest heaving, sweat dripping from his brow. "No," David muttered, his voice breaking. He spun, eyes darting to every corner of the hall, but nothing remained. Silence stretched cold, broken only by the faint tick of the wall clock. The air grew heavier, pressing down like an unseen hand. His skin prickled, the feeling of being watched stronger than ever. He whispered, "This isn't real," though the weight of dread crushed his denial. Shadows pooled thick at the edges of the walls, curling like smoke. The stranger's voice echoed faintly, disembodied. "Only one." A sound broke the silence, laughter, low and cruel, drifting from upstairs. David's veins iced as the laugh grew louder, familiar in its cadence. It was his laugh. His body stiffened, throat tightening as he whispered, "No, not me." The hallway lights flickered, shadows twitching as the sound crawled closer. His chest heaved, panic spilling into every muscle, yet he forced himself to move. He crept toward the stairs leading upward, the sound mocking him with every step. The laughter warped, bending into screams, then back into laughter, echoing across the walls. David clutched the rail, terror hollowing his chest as realization carved deep. The thing upstairs wasn't the stranger. It wasn't his double in the basement. It was something worse. David stumbled into the hallway, breath jagged, when the air shifted. He froze as two voices echoed his name, one from above, the other from below. His skin prickled, sweat pouring down his face. He turned slowly, and there they were. At the end of the hallway, his double, filthy and blood-smeared, stood upright, soil clinging to his skin. Behind him from the basement stairwell, the half-buried version gasped, eyes wide and pleading. David's chest collapsed inward, the sight tearing at his sanity. He muttered, "No, there can't be two of me." His doubles moved in unison, one whispering, one breathing raggedly. The house groaned, walls trembling, shadows thickening, as if reality itself cracked. David realized he was trapped between himself and something far worse. David's fists clenched, his body trembling as rage tangled with terror. "Which one of you is real?" he demanded, voice shaking. The double standing in the hallway smirked faintly, eyes glinting with something cruel. "I am," he said, tone sharp and confident. The buried double choked, coughing dirt, whispering, "He lies." David's pulse hammered, vision swimming as he backed against the wall. His eyes darted between the two, his mind unraveling with every breath. "You're trying to trick me," David hissed, but the words sounded hollow. Both doubles reached toward him, movements jagged, unnatural. Shadows pulsed with each word they spoke, their voices overlapping like broken glass. David's body quivered under the unbearable weight of doubt. The air thickened as the house seemed to breathe, walls groaning inward, wood splintering. David gasped, chest tight, the world spinning as if dragged into a vortex. Paint peeled in strips from the walls, curling like skin. Shadows twisted into shapes, resembling hands reaching from every corner. David stumbled forward, his lamp flickering violently, casting fractured light across the chaos. "It's not real," he whispered, his words drowned beneath the creaking roar of the house. His doubles laughed in unison, one sound hoarse, the other sharp, blending into something inhuman. The floor beneath David cracked, dirt seeping upward through the boards. His vision blurred with sweat and dread. The world collapsing in on itself, as though reality was being torn apart. David's hand shot toward a shovel propped against the wall, his last weapon against madness. His grip shook violently, splinters biting into his palm. His eyes flicked between his doubles, one smirking, one sobbing. "Only one survives," the confident double said, voice steady, mocking. The buried one coughed dirt, his whisper raw. "Please, kill him." David's chest heaved, torn between fury and despair, the weight of choice burning like fire. He raised the shovel, arms trembling as his vision swam. Shadows clung to him, stretching across the floor like chains. He screamed, a raw burst of fear and rage, the sound swallowed by the house. The moment stretched endless, reality hinging on his decision. The shovel swung, slicing the air as the basement light flickered violently. A sickening crack split the silence, followed by a scream that was both his own and not his own. Blood sprayed across the wall, shadows quivering in response. David's breath tore from him, chest heaving as the weapon clattered to the floor. One double collapsed, twitching, lifeless eyes reflecting his own terror. The other gasped, chest rising faintly, voice whispering, "You chose wrong." David staggered back, vision swimming as sweat and tears blurred together. The house groaned deeper, wood splintering as if alive. He realized there was no victory here, only horror. His choice had sealed something far darker, and the nightmare was only tightening its grip. Silence swallowed the basement after the blow, broken only by David's ragged breathing. He stumbled back, staring at the lifeless version of himself sprawled in blood. His chest convulsed with each breath, sweat dripping onto the dirt floor. His knuckles trembled, still stained red. The surviving double whispered faintly, voice weak but deliberate. "You think you've won?" David's knees buckled as his mind reeled, throat dry, eyes glassy with terror. He muttered, "No, I ended it." But the basement disagreed, the walls groaning, shadows quivering like something awakening. His double's lips curled into a broken smile. "No, you just began it." David staggered upstairs, legs weak as he dragged himself into the hallway. The house felt different, smaller, suffocating, each wall pressing inward. His footsteps echoed unnaturally, repeating back in delayed whispers. He leaned against the wall, chest heaving, sweat dripping from his chin. "It's over," he whispered, yet his voice sounded foreign, like someone else was speaking through him. He turned, eyes catching a mirror at the end of the hall. His pulse spiked, stomach twisting violently. The reflection staring back was not his. It smiled cruelly, lips cracked, eyes hollow. David froze, bile rising in his throat as terror struck deeper than blood. David's knees weakened as he stepped closer to the mirror, the air thick with rot and dust. His reflection did not move with him. It stared, smiling wider, mocking him with every twitch. His chest caved with panic, throat closing as he whispered, "That's not me." The reflection tilted its head, eyes gleaming with a hunger that froze his blood. It raised a hand slowly, pressing it against the glass, and David staggered back. The walls moaned, light flickering, until only shadows remained. Photographs on the wall beside the mirror caught his eye, each frame depicting him in places he had never been, holding a family he didn't know, standing in lives that weren't his. David tore his gaze from the mirror, stumbling toward the stairs, heart pounding like a drum. His breath came in sharp bursts as he muttered, "This isn't real." But the house groaned louder, lights flickering, floorboards vibrating under his feet. He tripped, crashing to his knees, eyes darting across the hall. Every photograph on the wall now showed the same face, his doubles, smiling cold and endless. His throat seized, hands clawing at the floor as he pushed up. He glanced back at the mirror one last time, his stomach dropping. The reflection was gone. Yet faint footsteps creaked behind him, slow, deliberate, drawing closer. David spun, chest collapsing inward as dread consumed him. From the basement below came a muffled scream, raw and desperate. His name, shouted in his own voice, echoed through the house. He stumbled back, face pale, shaking his head violently. "No, no more," he begged, tears streaking down his dirt-smeared cheeks. The scream grew louder, joined by scratching and pounding from beneath the floorboards. David's breath stopped, his body rigid with terror. The house seemed to breathe in unison with the sound. Then silence struck, heavy and absolute. In the darkness, the faintest whisper curled through the air, still buried.